Alright guys, welcome to another video. We're going to be creating another program to solve the next exercise in my list, which should cover more of the fundamentals of programming. Let's take a look at this question. So this is question 4. Question 4 says, create a program that will ask a user to input 5 grades. Calculate the average and display the following message. Your letter grade is, and then display the specific letter that represents the grade. Use the table below for reference. So for example, if the user gets an average of anything between 90 and 100, then we should show a star. If the user gets anything between 80 to 89 in an average, then it should show A, and so forth and so forth. For simplicity reasons, 0 to 59 will be a U, so this program doesn't become too big. Now, as we did before, we're going to take a look at a few things that should pop up and that should make bells ring in our ears. So it's asking for us to input 5 grades. So this is definitely an indication that we're going to be using a loop. And since we know how many grades we want, it's a good idea to use a for loop. So right here, I'm going to put some bullets, and I'm going to say I need a for loop required. Okay. Since it's asking us to find the average, like we did before, to find the average we need variables for average. So I'm going to call it AVG. For sum, we need a variable for grades. And we need a variable for our for loop, which should be count. Okay. And it's saying in case something happens, in case we get a specific average, we should show a specific letter. So we can use an if or a condition to say if the grade is between 90 and 100, then show this thing. If it's between 80 and 89, then show this thing, and so forth. So to do that, we need conditional statements. And we need these to check the average grade ranges and output the letter grade. Okay. Now, since we pretty much have broken down this question in small little parts, let's try and tackle it together. So I'm going to open up Pascal again one more time, and I'm going to do what I always do. So I'm going to make my structure, so program ex4 this time, and I'm going to go to create a begin and an end statement at the bottom. And like we always do, I'm going to create some variables. So I'm going to say var, and I'm going to say I need grade, and the grades are going to be in integers. Okay. I'm going to create a counter or a count. Okay, and this should be an integer as well. I'm going to create a sum, again in an integer. And last but not least, I'm going to create the average or AVG as a real number, because if we add a lot of numbers and then divide them, it's highly likely that we will get a decimal number. Now, the same thing goes in pretty much every program. It's a good idea when you begin your program to initialize some of these variables, which means give some of these variables a default value. When they start, they should start with this number, just in case anything goes wrong. So I'm going to give the grade variable a value of 0. I'm going to give the sum a value of 0. And I'm going to give the variable AVG, or average, a value of 0.00. Okay, now we need to ask that user for 5 grades. Now, every time I'm going to be asking the user for a grade, I'm going to be numbering the question. Okay, so the first time it's going to say number 1, enter a grade, number 2, enter a grade, number 3, enter a grade, number 4. Okay, so basically, to do this, we need a for loop. We could use any other loop we wanted, but in my case, I think the for loop keeps things simple. So I'm going to say for count equals 1 to 5. Do the following. And I'm going to put a little begin and end statement inside, like so. Okay, now don't forget that count will be increasing every time we reach the end of the loop. So the first time the loop's going to start, the count will be equal to 1, and then by the end, by the time it gets here, it will change to 2, and it will do it again and again and again until we reach count equals to 5. Okay, so with that said, we have a variable that will automatically be counting for us because it will be inside, or it will be used, with the for loop. The for loop automatically will update this count variable every time we reach the end. Every time. So the easiest part is to ask the user to enter his grade. So I'm going to use a write-len statement, and I'm going to, since I want the questions to be numbered every time I'm asking for a grade, I want it to be numbered. I'm going to use the only thing that I have in my program right now that is counting, the only variable, which is the count variable, like so. I'm going to put a comma, and then I'm going to open single quotes and put a full stop here. So in the first time it will run, it will show count, so it will show 1 dot and whatever else I put after. So it should be enter a grade. Okay, I'm going to close that, close the parenthesis, and put a semicolon. And I want to store whatever the user is going to type in. So I'm going to need a read-len, and I need to put in brackets where I want to store it. So it has to be stored in the grade variable, like so, because that's the one I believe is the right one to store the grades that the user has entered. Okay, and since we're looking for the average, we need to use the same method that we did before to find the sum, because to find the average we need the sum of the numbers divided by the number of numbers, or how many numbers were entered. Okay, so to do that we need to create a formula for the sum. So the sum will basically add the grade, the last grade that the user put, plus the first value of the sum. In this case it will be 0, so it will be sum. Okay, now once this happens, it will ask him for 5 grades, and at the end of the 5th loop we will have a total sum. Okay, then we need to calculate the average. So outside of the loop I'm going to calculate the average here. AVG is equal to the sum of all the numbers, sum, divided by the number of numbers, which is basically 5, but I don't have to write the number 5 because I already have a variable that will count for me. Okay, so I'm going to use the count variable. Don't forget that the count begins with a number 1, but once this loop is repeated until it reaches its limit, at some point this count will become 5, this loop will finish, it will stop, okay? And the value of count when it finishes will be 5. So it's the same thing as me writing the number 5 here. If you don't like this method, you could just simply put the number 5, but I recommend you get into the habit of reusing variables. Okay, now I'm going to go a step extra, and I'm going to show what the average was. I want it to be on the screen, so I'm going to use a write-len statement. And I'm going to say your average was, colon, I'm going to leave an extra space because I don't want the number of the average to be stuck to this colon. So I'm going to leave an extra space. I'm going to close my quote, and I'm going to put a comma, and I want to display the average. Okay, and I'm going to close that and put a single semicolon there. Now, if I leave it like this, Pascal will show me a really ugly number, because remember, average, we said it's going to be a real number. We have to tell Pascal how to show this number. So I'm going to put colon here, and I'm going to say I want 3 digits in the front before the decimal place, and I also want 2 decimal places. Excellent. Now before I go to the next part of the program, I'm going to read-len just to make sure that everything stays on the screen. And I'm going to run this program and see if it works, if there's any errors. So I'm going to save it as ex4, like so. And I'm going to execute it, and let's see it together. So I'm going to zoom in again, like we always do. And when the program is launched, all these variables are defined. We cannot see this, okay? They're declared. And then these values are given to grade, to sum, and to average. Now, these values here, okay, are subject to change while we're moving downwards in the program, okay? Because remember, Pascal moves from top to bottom. At some point, grade will no longer be 0 because later on we update the value of grade when we ask the user to enter a grade. Okay. Now, as you can see, the program's already in the loop, okay, and we can see already that the count value is equal to 1. Because here, where we wrote write-ln, we said show us what's inside count, and since it's the first time it's running, count is now equal to 1. Okay, and then we added a comma and added a bit of extra text to make it look a bit prettier. I'm going to put the grade 85. Okay, the moment I press enter, this 85 will be stored in the grade variable, so the grade will no longer be 0, it will now be 85. Okay, and now that grade, the 85, will be added to the value of sum. Remember that the sum was 0 when we started the program. So if only one number has been entered into this loop, the sum should basically be that number. So in our case, it's 85 plus 0. So the sum will be 85. Once I press enter, it should go all the way to the top. Count will become 2, and it should ask me for the second grade. Also, we need to remember that the sum will be equal to 85. So let's see. It says enter a grade, and we can see the number 2 here because the count variable has updated automatically. It's gone through the loop and it's updated. Okay? It's asking for a second grade, so I'm going to put 94. And what's going to happen now is that the value in grade will change from 85 to 94. Okay? And then we will do 94 plus 85, which was the previous sum. And this will happen over and over and over again until we reach count equals to 5. Okay, so I'm going to add a few more numbers. Okay, like so. And I'm going to get to my final number. So now count is equal to 5. And all I have to do now is go through this loop. Once I enter a number, the loop will finish and it will go and calculate the average outside the loop. Okay, so I'm going to put 96. Okay, and theoretically, it should tell me what the average of all these numbers is with this statement. Your average was, and then it should show me the value of average with 3 digits in front of the decimal place and 2 decimal places. So let's see. Perfect. So my average was 73.76. Excellent. So my program currently is working perfectly. All right, okay. So now we need to do the tricky part of the question, which basically wants us to give a value to that number. Okay, so we need a letter grade for that number. So to do this, we need to create a few if statements. Okay, so right under this, right under my write-ln, I'm going to create a conditional statement. I'm going to say if average was what? If the average was greater or equal to 90 and less than or equal to 100, then it should say you got an A star. Okay, so let's try that out. So if the average was greater or equal to 90 and the average was less than or equal to 100, then we're going to put a begin and an end and a semicolon, and we're going to write write-ln your letter grade was A star, like so. And I'm going to close my semicolon. Now for this to work, we need to put this statement and this statement in brackets, like so. Okay. Now, we've got a few more letter grades to go through, and it's pretty much the same process as we just did now. So I'm going to add B, which is 80 to 89. So I'm going to copy everything. Okay, I'm going to press enter, make them a bit neater like so, and I'm going to say if your grade was 80 or smaller or equal to 89, then your letter grade was A, and I'm going to do the same below here. So if your grade was 70 to 79, then your grade was B. We're going to continue to C. So if your grade was 60 to 69, then your grade was C, like so. And I think the rest were U. So if your average grade was 0 to 59, then your letter grade was a U. Okay? So pretty much what's happening now, we've written a ton of if statements, okay, that are checking to see the ranges. The ranges are from 90 to 100, from 80 to 89, from 70 to 79, and so forth. Okay, so let's run it and see what will happen. I'm going to compile, execute, zoom in so that you guys can see. And I'm going to put it on the side. My program's already done all of this. It's defined its variables. It's initialized some of them. It's initialized the grade. It's 0. The sum is 0. And the average is currently 0.0. And as we can see, it's already in the loop. It's on line 15 right now. Now, don't forget, I say this every time we have a for loop. The for loop uses the count variable in my case right now. This is the variable I gave it. Okay, it could be counter, it could be whatever you want it to be, as long as you declare it correctly. And every time it reaches the end of the loop, the count gets updated by 1. So the next time this loop will run, the count will be equal to 2. Alright, so as you can see, it says write ln and it's showing the value of count. Since this is the first time we're running the loop, the value of count is equal to 1. And it's asking me for a grade, so I'm going to put 85. Awesome. And the moment I press enter, the grade will be stored in the grade variable here. And it will be 85 plus whatever's in the sum, which is currently 0. So the sum will become 85. It will come to the next line, and it will update the count to become number 2. And it will say 2, number 2, enter a grade again. There you go. I'm going to keep on adding some numbers. Like so. Okay, and when I press enter now, my loop will finish, since grade is equal to 5. So, sorry, count is equal to 5. So count now is equal to 5. So it has to do it one last time. Okay, and then it will come and calculate the average. Okay, it will do this total sum divided by the number of repetitions, 5. Okay, or the number of numbers. And it will show me the average on the screen, and depending on that average, it will check every single one of these ranges to see where it should stop. Okay, so I don't know what the average is going to be, so I'm going to press enter. It says the average was 53.83. So what happened is that it displayed this, and then it started checking. Was the average between 90 and 100? Nope, so it went to the next one. Was the average greater or equal to 80 and also less than or equal to 89? Nope, so it ignored this statement and it went to the next one. It went to the next one and the next one until it reached the range that it was actually in. And it told me your letter grade was U. Okay? And then to keep everything on the screen, we have a readln here. Alright, that's awesome. It's a pretty big program, but it's quite simple once you get the hang of it. Now, I hope you found this video helpful as well. I'm looking forward to your feedback. Please don't hesitate to ask any questions, and I'll catch you in the next one.